All right, it is 1 o'clock, Sophie. Guess that means we should be getting started here pretty quick, yeah?
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool. Well, hello everyone and welcome to session 7 of Public Input Live. This is where we talk about best practices regarding public engagement and also demonstrate a little bit of the public input platform, which has been built around trying to help agencies and consultants over the last 7-8 years deploy these best practices. And so we'll talk best practices and show how you can actually do those in the platform. Just to kind of get our bearings before we get started today. We do this every Friday, 1 o'clock. We're happy to have you. We hope you join us again next Friday. What we're observing or the environment you're in, if you're at publicinput.com/public input live, you're in our virtual meetings platform and you should see a couple things there. If you want to participate by phone, you could call in and listen to this meeting or engage in a number of different ways. You also have the opportunity to put in your comments in a little, you see a little comment field over there. So feel free, if you have any comments or questions, put them there and we'll address those at the end of the call. Make sure we do that and get some engagement from y'all that are joining and hopping in with us today. And before we talk about what we're going to be getting into today, let's go ahead. I want to introduce my co-host here today, which is Sophie. Can you tell us a little bit about your role here in Public Input?
Yeah, definitely. Hey everyone, Sophie here. I am a solutions architect at Public Input, which basically means that I help scope out all of the features and functions that our platform provides to specific needs that prospective customers have kind of detailed out to us. So it's a fun role and I love it. What do you do?
Yeah. Yeah. What do I do? I don't know. All sorts of stuff, but I am got the title of partnerships director, which is, I think, just a fancy way to say I really like working with consultants. So consultants can leverage our platform to deploy when they're doing projects or in any kind of engagement effort that they may have with a public agency. They can pick up and license Public Input. So they have this big toolkit of resources to be able to serve their client with. So that's something that you do see. So that's essentially what I do here. And perfect. So now we know who we are and what we're going to be. Let's talk about what we're going to be doing here together today. Today we're going to be focusing on two main things. One is participant mapping, kind of understand what like engagement mapping is and what that means and why that is a best practice. And then we're going to be talking about our popular public equity mapping platform and showing what this additional resource could mean to add additional context to your engagement efforts. And then what we want to talk about here is best practices. So we'll also mention where you can get this information if you do not license Public Input, because we just want to help you. And so even if you don't license Public Input, there's some ways that you can get this information. It just may be a little bit more difficult for you to deploy. But if you've got some GIS team and that sort of thing, hey, this is definitely something you could do. So we'll be walking through some of that as well. We try to keep these to about 15 to 25 minutes. And yeah, so with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Sophie, who will be showing the back end of the platform. And I think we're going to get started on participant mapping, correct?
Yep. Yeah.
Excellent. Let's dive in.
Cool. Okay. So I am sharing my screen here. So like Murphy mentioned, there's kind of two pieces to this. The first part that's happening here is that our software takes all your participants of a particular engagement effort. So that could be a project or a survey or even a meeting. And it's going to pinpoint them on a map of your city or county. So here's an engagement map for an actual project that we've pulled up here. It shows us a heat map of kind of where the majority of our participants are clustered. Looks like we've got some that are kind of some small pockets outside of. We're looking at Asheville right now, so some small pockets outside of Asheville. But it looks like we've got the majority here, kind of in the center of Asheville. We can zoom in on this. We can zoom out. And just kind of get a good picture.
Can you toggle that clustering real quick?
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, yeah, it'll do it. Once you get close enough, it'll actually do it automatically for you.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, so these little pinpoints here represent an actual person. So this is kind of, where they were when they took the survey or engaged with us, wherever that format was. So yeah, it's great to be able to kind of have a map of your, of your participants, be able to put those on a map of your community and kind of just get a general overview of where folks are participating and where they are in the community.
Yeah, I love that. Maybe zoom out a little bit. I want to see what we see here, and I want to talk about like how this information comes in. This can come in through a number of different means. It can come in through, like, let's say we asked in a survey or some kind of engagement, like, hey, let us know where you live, or we ask for an address, or maybe you ask for the nearest cross section because people don't really want to give you an address, or maybe they say like, put a pin on a map to let us know about where you live. There's a number of different ways where you can ask those questions. The other thing that you can do is, survey platforms. We gather a GeoIP address, and you can run that through a process to try to put an estimated location of where folks are. Now, it is estimated, right? It's just what is publicly available information. It's not personally identifiable. But the interesting thing is, if they're on, it can help you add context, but it isn't precise. So the most precise thing is to try to ask that, but not everybody may provide that feedback. And so there is some ways that you can understand where your engagement's coming from by using some of this different technologies. So I just wanted to add some context to how you actually see engagements on a map. For as far as like participants on a map, there's all kinds of mapping engagement questions you can do, like put pins on maps and that sort of thing. But this is particularly like, hey, this is an individual that participated in this survey, and they could have done or this project, and they did any number of things. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for kind of adding some context there. And kind of, that sort of goes into what I was about to say. So like the second part to this is that we can overlay some crucial boundaries to this that will help us understand a couple of things. So we know that, a lot of competitive grants or federal funding requires agencies to be able to show that they've involved all sorts of facets of their community. So that could be demographics, that could be variety in age, variety in education, things like that. And that can be really hard to do if you've got data scatter or data silos, but almost impossible if people are not volunteering some of that information, which we know that, most people don't necessarily volunteer, especially information that's kind of related to demographics. Another use case for that is sometimes a city manager or an elected official might ask if the staff have heard from all parts of the community, or just kind of ask in general, who are they hearing from, who are they not? So let's go over to another project here. This is just kind of some dummy data. This is from our demo account right here. So we've got some really great project participants here. We're in California now. This is awesome. We've got like, almost 3,500 or almost 3,600 folks here. So we can dial in. Let me move around here. Looks like most of our engagement is kind of coming from this LA, sort of San Diego area, but let's dial in and let's say we want to focus on LA and focus on kind of the engagement we're getting here. Whoops. Sometimes it does that. When you're using a
go ahead and toggle clustering so we can see those broken up a little bit. And that's perfect. Yeah. So this looks like a super successful engagement effort. I mean, how many folks on the call would be really excited if their project had 3,500 participants, 3,600 participants? And the question is looks really great. We've got high numbers. Do we have a representative audience of the community? And so that's kind of maybe a challenging question that you don't always understand unless people are actually responding to demographic questions, which like Sophie had just mentioned, which we do know that not everybody wants to respond to those. So you're not sure. How can we be more sure or add some different context to the engagement? That's the question.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we can do now using this map, we've got our participants here, we've got them pinpointed on a map. Let's go ahead and start adding some layers here. So I'll go over to this tab. And as you can see, there's a couple of different layers, or, sometimes we also call these data sets. That's kind of, the more technical term for it. And what you'll notice is that these are all in the 95th percentile. So this is going to show us where we have the highest concentration of, children under 5, or where the highest concentration of areas where there's like limited English proficiency, or maybe some low income residents. So this is kind of a really good measure right here. So let's go ahead, let's do limited English proficiency. We'll apply that to the map.
As you apply that, I want to talk about where that comes from. So this comes from local census data, which is something that's put out by the federal government, actually the EPA's data, which is EJScreen. We'll actually talk about that here as we kind of close. I'll talk a little bit more about where you can get some of this information.
Yeah. So let's zoom in here. Now that we've got these layers, we can really see where the holes are in terms of where our participation is coming from and where it's not, and how there's not as many of these little pinpoints coming from these yellow shaded areas, but it seems like there's a lot coming from just outside of it. So, some of these areas that have no pinpoints, we can kind of start to strategize how we might want to course correct or adjust our strategy. So, maybe a text survey would do really well in these areas here. Or maybe we know, I'll zoom in a little bit here. Maybe we know, for example, this is a park. We know that there's a local community center or some kind of community asset in this area, and it's really popular. We can partner with them and maybe set up a kiosk at the next event and have folks answer a few quick questions as they're coming in, or talk to them and see if they'd be interested in hearing more from their local government, or participating in any surveys or initiatives that might be coming up.
Yeah, a good point is we're looking at limited English proficiency, right? So when we're thinking about this, the context is as like, hey, have we done everything that we did we only do surveys in English? And if so, then this isn't really that surprising, because limited English proficiency may mean that they prefer another language and they may not want to dive into some kind of surveying or like providing feedback on something if it's not going to be easy for them to comprehend what's happening there. So we could be more mindful in maybe deploying alternative language options into these communities as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so just to kind of bring it back a little bit. So, this tool not only helps us understand where exactly in the community are folks most engaged and, who's not as engaged, but we can also use this as a tool to kind of adjust our strategy, understand, where we could do better, and sort of just try to target those areas that are shaded and that we're not getting that participation from.
Right. And do you mind turning on the I think it was the minority layer. It was like a purple layer I looked at one time with this test data. Mm-hmm. And is this the one? Yeah. We zoom out slightly on this, it is pretty eye-opening to see that, like, that area just south of downtown with like it's like there's low density of engagement in that region, and also happens to be a high density, the 95th percentile of density when it comes to minority population. So if the question was asked like, hey, are we reaching everyone in the community, because I don't want a bunch of kickback on this, hey, we can see here that there may be some work that we can do to make sure we're reaching certain communities. So this is helpful at any point in time during your engagement effort. You could do it at the very beginning to help you build your strategy, or you can do it in the middle to make sure that who you've heard from and maybe adjust the strategy, as Sophie had mentioned. If you do it at the end, yeah, maybe a little too late to adjust the strategy or try to do better. But now that you know how to do this, you can definitely do it and use something like this for your next engagement effort. Any additional comments on this before I talk about EJScreen?
Yeah, I was just going to mention, if you have a GIS team, great, because this tool is going to automate a process that would take a lot of manpower to do on its own. And if you don't have a GIS team, that's completely fine. You can use this tool to kind of get that same really valuable insight that having a GIS team and having a GIS team that's going to do this process will provide. So it's just great. It's great to be able to kind of put that power in the hands of even smaller municipalities.
Yeah, and in my world, Sophie, I think smaller consultants that feel like only the biggest firms can bring this this like big firepower to their projects, and we just don't have the bench strength, we don't have the personnel to be able to manage this type of thing or build this ourselves. And there are options where you can just there's basically licenses, or you could do something for a project of any size, so that you can bring this to your projects and do more with less, add some efficiencies to your strategy that you have. So I like to say, like, public input, as you're watching this, want to kind of resonate with you that public input is an arrow for your quiver. When you think about an opportunity where you're like, hey, this project pursued or something like this is like, hey, awesome for consultants, just bring it in when needed. And obviously thinking about agencies, it's like, hey, pick this up. So every one of your project is deploying this type of technology, so that you know that you're empowering your consultants that come work for you to have the tools needed to do their best or do the best work possible, and have as much information as possible. Perfect. The last thing I want to say is like, hey, we want to talk about best practices here, just about enablement. So if you're looking at this and you're like, hey, this is great public input, but like, I'm not interested in licensing a new tech. Hey, no problem. Do this yourself. Consider how you can get engagement mapping for any type of survey or commenting that you're doing within your projects. There's some different technologies that you can do to be able to do that. And again, to get these layers, which we call equity mapping within the public input environment, we also, it's also from a data set called EJScreen, which is issued by the EPA. And so if you navigate over or do a Google search for EJScreen, environmental justice screen, you can actually find an area where you can find some of this data and download it. And again, if you've got a GIS team to be able to build some of this, you can go get some of that data and be able to put that on maps and start building some of this stuff yourself. Public input just may be able to provide some efficiency to you in the cases that you do have the capabilities on your team to be able to do this. So by all means, do this, because definitely a best practice in making sure that we're engaging all corners and that we are deploying strategies to reach everyone in the community. So whether through public input or go and build it yourself and try to find the tools within EJScreen where you can find that data. Perfect. Anything else, Soph, before we flip over to what we'll be talking about next week?
Yeah, no, I'm good over here. I'll stop sharing, so I'll give you the screen back.
Excellent. Hey, I'll go ahead and share mine as we kind of wrap up. Can you see my screen?
Yep.
Excellent. Cool. So Sophie, as we always do, you mind telling them what we've got coming up here next week?
Yeah, so next week, I believe we're going to be moving into reporting. Don't quote me on that, but we are going to be showing our dynamic reporting and how to build out really cool, slick reports that are also just super useful for kind of, understanding the information and then being able to share that out to any stakeholders as well.
Yeah, I think we're slightly off our original schedule because we wanted to get equity mapping out because there's been so much interest in it here recently. I want to welcome anybody watching Public Input Live right now on the page to go ahead and leave your comments. We'll hang out just for a moment to answer any comments that come in here. We are watching this live and can engage. So if anything does come in, we will make sure we address those comments. And I want to leave our contact information here. If you're interested in learning more about public input by becoming certified, you can go to publicinput.com/get certified. And you can apply to that program there. And essentially, that's just an opportunity for you to actually get your hands on and actually build within the public input environment and really like learn the whole thing. It takes some time and some effort to be able to do it, but it is a certification that you can carry with you for 12 months. Because we're always building new stuff, so we want to make sure you stay up to date. So it is a 12-month certification. If you are interested in talking about public input, whether you're an agency or a consultant, don't hesitate to reach out to me and I'll point you in the right direction. You can reach me by going to Michael or email me at michael@publicinput.com. Super easy to get a hold of us over there. And if there are no questions, we can go ahead and sign off. Sophie, do you see any questions coming in? Any comments? I see none right now. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and we'll go ahead and close out and just say, hey, thank you so much for joining us here today. And I hope you will come back here next week where we'll be talking more about some reporting and analyzing your engagement data. But until then, we wish you successful engagements.
Thanks, everyone. See you next week.